So I want to start with a disclaimer. I am by no means the most qualified person to speak about hospitality. This is challenging to me, and as I've been reflecting on these things and preparing for this evening, I've been convicted and challenged myself that I really need to grow in my willingness to step outside of my own comfort zone. I am an introvert through and through. We just did our staff retreat a few weeks ago, and we had a little personality profile. And my people person, the little 4-letter describer that tells you, where you rate on your people person, whatever that is, mine was like down at the very bottom. So I would be perfectly happy in a closet with a book. And so somehow I keep ending up in jobs. I was a youth minister for 6 years, and I now work, in a very large parish where I'm very visible much of the day on Sunday, and I go home and I collapse because all of my energy has been completely taken away. So this is a challenge for me, even as I think about my role as being someone who models hospitality for the parish. And it also has been a challenge to me personally, because as much as I think about what this means here at the parish, much of what I've been reading and thinking about is how this is not simply something that we do when we walk in the doors of our church. This is a lifestyle. And this is, when we talk about hospitality and evangelization, yes, evangelization happens inside of our church because there are people who come through our church doors who need to meet Christ. We all need to meet him repeatedly. But there are people who are desperately in need of an encounter with Christ. And so certainly that happens here, but even more so, it happens when we leave this place. And as I thought about this, I thought about the 3 other ladies that share our little section of our apartment complex. Every single one of them is somewhat advanced in years and living alone. And, when I see them, I think I should really reach out and, what would that look like? I don't know. And we say hi and we, cross paths, and, my husband helps carry in their groceries, but beyond that, I don't know what you do. But I am definitely feeling convicted that there's a call here to be more bold. So I'm challenged in everything that I'm about to say. I think a lot of you, because of the fact that you signed up to serve in hospitality ministries, are probably more naturally inclined to be with people and to reach out to people and to speak to people. And that's a beautiful thing. I'm glad that there are people who this is just a natural gift that God has given you, and that's beautiful. Some of you, maybe that's not, you don't see that in yourself. But regardless, to some extent, this is a call to all of us. And one of the things that we really want to do through our hospitality ministry is model to the parish that this is not only the responsibility of our greeters and our ushers and our welcome center hosts. Hospitality is the responsibility of every single person who sits in our pews, who's a member here, who is a parishioner, because we're all called to extend Christ to others and to welcome one another, to be warm and friendly and generous to one another. And so really, those of you who have signed up to serve in these ministries, you're serving as models for what we all need to be doing. And we're very grateful to you for that. It's an important service, and we hope that as we focus more attention on these ministries, that will spill over. Because once someone experiences hospitality, and that's something we're going to reflect on tonight, when you experience that for yourself, it's more natural to want to turn and to extend that to someone else. And so by you being present here on Sunday morning or Saturday evening or Sunday evening, You model something, you extend hospitality to others, and in turn, you open others to then extend that hospitality to their neighbors in the pew, the other people that they encounter before and during and after Mass. So we hope that this will be something that will take root more and more and grow in our parish. So first of all, we need to define a few terms. So hospitality, what is it? It is the quality or disposition of receiving and treating guests and strangers in a warm, friendly, and generous way. So here at St. Michael's, anyone who walks through our doors, regardless of whether they are a parishioner or not, they are a guest. And some are strangers. Some people, the more time I spend out in the narthex, the more I realize we have people walking through our doors all the time who are visiting from other states, who don't usually come here, and we get a lot of people coming for confession who are not parishioners here. They don't know where the confessionals are, and they're looking for, they probably saw online somewhere, you've got confession on Sunday afternoon. That's an unusual time to have confession. They show up. So we get a lot of people walking through our doors who really are strangers. And we need to extend hospitality to them. And then the question of what is evangelization? So evangelization is the zealous proclamation of the gospel in order to bring others to Christ and to his church. So we are all called to evangelize. This is one of Father Brian's super priorities that he's articulated for the parish. And it's absolutely necessary. Some of you have attended the retreat that happened a couple weeks ago for ministry leaders in the parish, or I'm sure we've heard all of the statistics about how more and more people are not identifying as any religion at all anymore. This is becoming more and more common in our culture, and so there are more and more people who are without any kind of vision for what life is beyond the very material aspects of this life. And so there are a lot of people who need to encounter Christ, who need to hear the gospel, and who need to be drawn into the church and the body of Christ. So then how do these two things go together? So hospitality proclaims something, right? Hospitality is not just an empty, it can be. Sometimes, hospitality is very common in a lot of industries now where, customer service is very important, and it has its role in customer service as far as bringing repeat clients back and making a profit and all of these things. But in our context, hospitality is something more. And hospitality proclaims something that ought to be authentically coming from our heart, right? And so I think hospitality in the context of our church proclaims three things. First, it proclaims that it is good to be here. So frequently people will say, well, people go to church, especially Catholics, they're bored, they're grumpy, it's just, we have to go to church. And they're not excited about it. And so by being hospitable, by being there with a smiling face and a welcoming demeanor, we say, we're excited to be here. We're happy to be here. We want to come to Mass. This is something that we desire to do. And it's because we found something that we receive here that you can't find anywhere else. And because we have encountered Christ, because we've known his love, because we've experienced his mercy, we are excited to be here. And that's something that a lot of people don't experience when they come to church. They may, force themselves out of bed in the morning and get over to the church because they feel like it's a responsibility, a duty. Less and less do people actually even respond to that. A lot of people now just say, I can get to heaven without that because I'm a good person. And that's really missing the point of, it's a good thing to go and to worship God, and it's a beautiful thing to know that He's present here in our church in a way that He's not present anywhere else. So it is good for us to be here, and we're excited to be here, and we have something to share. It's also good that you are here, right? Every single person who walks through our doors, when we're there with a smiling face and we're welcoming, that says to that person, it's good that you're here. It's not just about me here doing my thing, but we're so happy that you have made the decision to get out of bed this morning or to turn off the TV, whatever choice it is that that person has made. We are glad that they made that choice and they made the effort to come. And there's a number of reasons why that's so important. Kurt Thompson is a psychiatrist, and he's done a lot of work on interpersonal neurobiology, which is fascinating, even though I don't understand that much. But interpersonal neurobiology is the study of how really our entire systems are wired in a way that we are all connected, right? And so I'm sure you've heard stories about orphan children in Romania who are fed and clothed and diapered and bathed, but who otherwise are always in their crib and they don't get any kind of touch or affection. And even though they're receiving everything that they need physically, they fail to thrive, and in many cases, they actually die because people need people. People don't just need to be fed and watered and, like some animals. So what he says is that we all are born into the world looking for someone, looking for us. And we remain in this mode of searching for the rest of our lives. So every single person has this desire. When a baby is born, that baby is looking for someone who's looking for him or for her. And that baby needs to know that that person sees me, that person cares for me. And that never goes away. And so the reality, though, is that more and more people in our world today live alone. There was a survey done earlier this year, Cigna, a health insurance company. They did a survey of 20,000 adults, and they found that 54% of the respondents said that they feel like no one actually knows them well. So that's just in general, right? The rate of people who actually live alone is going up and up and up in our country and around the world, especially in countries in Europe. But it's becoming much more common. There was a time when families lived together, and regardless of marital state or whether somebody was widowed or never married, whatever the case may be, families lived close together, and that just isn't the case anymore. And so more and more people live alone, but even among people who may not live alone, even those people, 54% of them say they feel lonely. They don't feel like there's anybody who actually knows them. 56% of people said that the people that they surround themselves with are not necessarily with them. So even though they may live around people, they don't feel like those people have their back. They don't feel like they are actually, walking in the same direction. They're just kind of living separate lives together. And then 40% said that they lack companionship, or that their relationships aren't meaningful, and that they feel isolated from others. So this is the reality of our culture, that even though we're more connected now than ever with social media and all of these things, people are more lonely now than they've ever been, I think. I think that's pretty fair to say. People feel disconnected because relationships aren't necessarily authentic and they don't necessarily share meaningful relationships. But then, of course, there are actually a lot more people who don't have anyone living close by to share life with at all. And so I see people walking through our doors all the time who are alone. And I think, gosh, that was me not that long ago. And I remember that being a very lonely experience and feeling like, as a young adult, it was very difficult to find a place in a parish and to feel like there was any place to really plug in. But I see people from all spectrums, widows, widowers, possibly, other people who are single for whatever reason, or people who are Catholic but their spouse isn't Catholic. And so they're coming to church by themselves. And I think that is just difficult. This is not an easy life to live. It's joyful and it's beautiful, but it's so much better when you can share it with someone. And so for those people who are coming alone, it's such a good thing for them to know, we're glad you're here, regardless of, that we're glad that you make the effort, even though it's just you making it happen with the help of the Holy Spirit, that you're making the effort to come, and we want to be a family to you. People need to hear that, and they need to feel like they're being connected into a community, and that community cares about whether they're there or not. And then hospitality also proclaims that it's good to be here together. So a lot of us, and I include myself in this, have this sense that Mass is my time with Jesus. Like, I come here to be with Jesus. And that's true. We encounter Jesus here in a very personal way. However, our liturgy, our communal prayer that we, especially our Sunday Mass, but all forms of liturgy, they're communal. And this is a time when the body of Christ comes together. So it's not just about me and Jesus, it's actually about all of us together. So the Catechism of the Catholic Church says, it is the whole community, the body of Christ united with its head, that celebrates. Liturgical services are not private functions, but are celebrations of the Church, which is the sacrament of unity, namely the holy people united and organized under the authority of the bishops. Therefore, liturgical services pertain to the whole body of the Church. They manifest it and have effects upon it. For this reason, rites which are meant to be celebrated in common with the faithful present and actively participating should, as far as possible, be celebrated in that way rather than by an individual and quasi-privately. So that's a long quote. Basically saying this is a communal celebration. It is good that we are here together. We're here to celebrate together. And as much as our prayer is personal in that, we're praying in our heart, in the silence of our heart, we're also participating in the vocal prayers of the Church. We're lifting our hearts up together. We're united in the offering of Christ and through our communion that we all share that draws us together as the body of Christ. And so because it's good that we're here together, that means it's not the same if anybody's missing. One person who decides not to come today, that changes the whole dynamic, right? St. Paul talks about we're the body of Christ. And what happens if, you're missing the eye or the hand or the foot, right? There's something very necessary that's missing. And more than that, this is the time when the Father calls all of his children together. This is why Sunday worship is so important. We can come to Mass every day of the week, and that's a wonderful thing, and it certainly helps us to grow in holiness and to grow closer to God. But there's a reason why God calls us to all come together on one day of the week to worship, because he wants all of his children at the table together, right? So just like, Christmas or Thanksgiving, if someone doesn't come home to celebrate together, there's a chair at the table that's not filled, right? If that's a son or a daughter or a relative, whoever it might be, it changes the whole dynamic of the celebration. And so we might not feel it. Obviously, our parish is huge, and we might not notice if someone's missing, but the Father notices, and he wants to have his children together. And so it's good that we are here together. So in our hospitality, we proclaim these three things. And it's good for us to be aware that this is really what we're saying to people when they walk through our door. And we're present, and we're there to meet them and to greet them and to bring them in. So as we consider that, it's also good for us to consider, well, what do we do that really expresses these things? And how does the way that we extend hospitality communicate this to other people? So a few weeks ago, our worship commission met, and that's just some representatives from the parish who get together, and we talk about things related to worship and liturgy, and we reflect. And so we were reflecting on hospitality, and Dr. Vogt asked us a question about when was a time that we experienced magnanimous hospitality in our lives, and how did that impact us? And that brought to my mind an experience that I had almost 20 years ago, but it was so impactful that it's still, when I think about it, warms my heart and makes me realize just the unique experience that it was. And so that conversation that we had was very fruitful, and we came to reflect. A number of people shared stories, and there were things that we all could say about those experiences. As different as they were, they had similar impacts in each one of our lives. And so my experience was a series of mission trips that I made to Honduras. So the first time that I went to Honduras was as a junior in college, and we spent a week, and we visited small communities on the Caribbean coast, and I experienced a kind of hospitality there that was so impactful that after a week I knew that I wanted to go back. And it wasn't because I really love cold showers, or because I love mosquitoes, or because I wanted to experience malaria and dengue and everything else that comes with life in a tropical country. But the way that they were joyful and welcoming and generous and excited to share their life made me want to be part of it. And that's exactly, I think, what we want to do here, right? I mean, if we were really doing hospitality the way that these people did hospitality, people would be like, knocking down the doors to get in, because they would say, what is it about these people? These people are different. And even though, in a lot of ways, I think you could compare. I mean, people think about the Catholic Church. Oh, Catholic Church has problems. Why would you want to be Catholic? Same thing, Honduras is a third world country. Who would want to live there? And yet, when you experience the joy that people have there, you think, okay, well, maybe there's something here that I'm not, that I need to get to know. Maybe I need to take another step, get a little closer here to find out what is it that makes these people so joyful? What is it that makes these people so welcoming? And how can I become more like that? And that's really what brought about the evangelization of the early world after Christ walked the earth and then ascended, and he left the apostles, and just this small community of people transformed the world, right? And what was it that the people around them said? These people love each other. And it was such a radical thing for them to witness in a world that was really quite brutal. I think not that different in a lot of ways from our world, maybe not quite so physically brutal today. And yet, if you spend enough time on the internet, it's pretty brutal. And so when people walk through our doors, if they experience this as a loving, welcoming, generous place, that's going to trigger something, a question. What is it that makes these people like this? And they might just take that step to get a little bit closer. So I identified 3 things that I thought were very impressive about the way that the people that I met in Honduras extend hospitality. First, they made room in their lives for us. So that first mission trip that I went on, we showed up completely unannounced, and they dropped everything. And we had a priest with us. We had a few plastic rosaries, and that was about it. A bunch of college kids. We weren't coming with truckloads of, building materials or food or anything else. All we had was ourselves, some rosaries, and a priest. And yet they stopped. They made food for us. They gave us a tour of their little farming community, and this was a community that had been wiped out just 2 years before by Hurricane Mitch. These people had lost everything. And so everything that they had there, they built up in just that short time, and they were so excited to show us. And, I think that's very true. The same, here, that if we're excited about what's happening in our parish, don't we want to show people? And so, but in order to do that, we need to make room, right? We need to make space for people. So this family up in the top, same thing, a few of us, this was actually when I lived there. I spent 2 years there after college. And we just one weekend went up into the mountains, didn't tell anybody we were coming. And this family, they gave us their beds. They welcomed us into their home. I mean, we were complete strangers. They had no idea who we were. They fed us, they sacrificed their privacy, and they lent us a horse for the ride home. And so this is a disposition to make room, even unannounced, even on a moment's notice, to say, you're here. Great. We want to welcome you in. So we are called also to invite others in and to give them a place at the table, even if it's an inconvenience to ourselves. And that's difficult, I think, especially in a parish like this, or any parish. We get so used to our routines. And so there's a community of people that we know, and it's really easy to become comfortable with the people that we know. And yet we're called to make room for the people, whoever they are, who walk through our door. This family was the closest family that lived to us on the main road, and regardless of time or day, this woman would, if I was walking down the road, she'd call me in for a cup of coffee. And when I came back to the United States, this was the thing that was the most difficult adjustment for me, was that I wanted to reconnect with people, but no one had room in their calendar. It was like, oh yeah, we can get together for coffee. 3 weeks from now, I've got a few hours on Thursday night. Okay, but that's the reality of how our lives are, right? I mean, it's just crazy here. Everyone's so busy. But if we make room, at least in those designated times that we're here to serve, or even just the moments that we encounter people, just enough room to let that person know, I'm here for you. That can make a huge impact in someone's life. another thing about the way that they offered hospitality, there was no judgment. And I think one of the most unique things about what I experienced was that despite how simple everything was that they had to offer, they didn't say, oh, my house is a mess. Oh, I've only got rice and beans. Oh, I don't have something worth offering. They had what they had, and they offered it generously, willingly, gladly. And I think we have a tendency in our culture to judge our own gift and to say, well, I'm not that friendly. I'm not that kind of person. I don't have the gift to be able to speak to people that way, or or on a larger scale, I don't have time to make a 5-course dinner, so I can't invite the neighbors over, or whatever it might be. But we're constantly judging the gift that we have to offer, and too often we decide it's not worth giving. And yet, wouldn't that gift be worth giving just because that person would be happy to receive it? And so it's a challenge to us to not judge our own gift and to withhold because it's not what we would like it to be, but just to say, this is what I have, and I'll give it because God's calling me to give, and I can bless someone in some way by being generous this way. So we're called to risk embarrassment sometimes in order to make others feel included at home. So sometimes we don't have the right words. We think, I think this person might need help, but I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And so instead of jumping in and just being there to ask or to offer, we hold back and we avoid the feeling of embarrassment that we might have if we don't have exactly the right thing to give. So we need to be a little bit bold sometimes and courageous. And that was one of the beautiful things about the way that they celebrate everything. I think one of the most beautiful masses I ever experienced was in a very simple little church, plastic chairs for pews, and a plastic tablecloth with little streamers on the ceiling. But it was the gift that they had to give, and that was what they offered God. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody offer anything more authentically in my life. And that's similar. We don't have to have the perfect gift. We give what we have, and we make it available to whoever presents themselves in front of us. On the flip side, they also didn't judge us. So several of our mission journeys, we hiked 5 hours into the mountains in jungle heat with monkeys swinging and mosquitoes and dirt roads and all the rest. So by the time we got to this village, we were just dirty and sweaty and gross. And all I could think was, you don't want to get too close. And yet they would come out, and people we didn't know at all, hugging us, kissing us, and I was like, you can keep your distance, I don't mind. But there was no judgment. It wasn't, maybe you should go clean up, and then we can get to know each other. They were just so excited to see us, and they knew, you walked 5 hours into the mountains to come and see us? Well, hallelujah. And I think that same thing is true here. I mean, how many families, it's a battle for them to get the kids out the door and get everybody in the car and get to church. And they may come through the doors looking like harried and, a little bit crazy, but they got here. And so, whatever the circumstances, we're called to meet Christ in those people and to be excited to see them and to welcome them through our doors and to acknowledge you may have climbed a mountain to get here, but you got here, and we're really excited to see you. And finally, there was a real sense of encounter. So this was the women's group that I worked with for a couple of years, and in our weekly Bible studies, these women would offer hospitality to one another. They would ask us questions about what life was like here, how we experienced life in Honduras, what our lives were like, our families, and then we would talk about their lives, and they'd tell us about their families. And there was a real sense of encounter, and it was such an extraordinary blessing to hear about their lives and to be able to share our own lives and to have that just deep sharing that came out of that. And I think not that you can necessarily do that in the 2 minutes somebody's running through the narthex to get to church, and yet our hospitality doesn't need to end right there. And we'll talk about some ideas of ways that we can make space for encounter like this to really be able to make time for that kind of sharing. So how can we incorporate some of these principles into the way that we serve here at the parish and beyond the parish? I mean, this is not something that's limited to our campus right here. So as far as making room, it's really important to make time. So I know everyone is extremely busy, but I think ideally it would be great to get here early so that, even those first people who are coming through the doors, we do have people who get here early. Definitely 90% of people come in the last 3 minutes before Mass and the 2 minutes after Mass starts. But there are people who do get here early, and it's wonderful to be able to greet them as well, and also to just have the time to be in a space where you're there, right? And you're not still racing from trying to get here. So it's important for us to make room in our lives to really be able to be present here and to have the time to spend. It's also possible to stay late. I know that's not, it's really easy to just, okay, we're done, we run out the door. But like I said, there's not a lot of opportunities to really have encounters before Mass because people are heading into Mass, and it's great if they're here early and they want to go pray. That's wonderful. But after Mass is when people mull about, and we have coffee and donuts, and there's things that happen, and there's, sometimes there's groups up in the narthex that are offering different service opportunities or retreat opportunities. And there's time there when you can stop and you can talk with people, and even people that you don't necessarily know. And that's bold, but it's an opportunity to connect with people and to actually have a moment to encounter someone. So, and I know also our ushers have expressed that it would be really helpful if they could get some help sometimes distributing bulletins, because they have numerous other responsibilities after Mass, and so greeters are always welcome to pick up a stack of bulletins and help distribute those bulletins, and in the meantime make some encounters with people, introduce yourself, whatever the case may be. And then making room too is being present. And so we can have the tendency, I know I do it myself, when we see somebody that we know, we get caught up in conversation with people that we're already very familiar with, and we're not present to the people who we don't know. And so, especially when we're serving in ministry, hospitality ministry, it's important to make room and be present to the people that are in front of us, even if it means saying, I'd really love to catch up with you. Let's talk after Mass. And being able to focus on, being a greeter, being an usher, being the host at the Welcome Center. So making room sometimes means, not getting caught up in little clustered conversations, but making that space so that you're available to encounter other people. And then there's also the extra mile. So people frequently ask, where's the water fountain? Where's the new member welcome? Where's the confessional? People ask numerous questions. Where's a bulletin? And instead of just saying, oh, it's down the hall, it's over there, we can actually accompany those people and say, let me take you. And instead of just, trying to point people in the right direction, we can go that extra mile and walk with them. And that's also an opportunity for encounter. So, are you a regular here? I'm Janel. It's nice to meet you. And those can be moments for actually getting names. There's a lady who stopped once to ask me a question before the 5 o'clock Mass. I'd never noticed her before, and now I see her every Sunday, because now that's that lady. And now I still don't know her name, but I know her, and when I see her, I say hi. So, when you have those encounters where it's even just a simple question, all of a sudden that person might stand out just a little bit more, and you realize, okay, we've got a connection. I can, say hi and make sure that when I see her, I don't just, miss her completely. It's also important for us to assist. So I see moms coming in carrying the car seat, the diaper bag, they've got a child by the hand, and the teddy bear flying, waggling behind. And those are opportunities where we can actually assist. And until I really started thinking about this, I thought, gee, that lady could really use some help, but didn't really think, oh yeah, I could go. And so those are things that we can do when we see someone who really could use assistance. Please, feel free. I think that's one of the things I want to communicate most tonight, is that you're not tied to a station. And if you see an opportunity to go the extra mile, go for it. Be creative in how you offer hospitality to people, even if it means, you might have to just set the liturgy guides down, or prop the door open. But if you have an opportunity to really reach out to someone and go the extra mile with them, please do. And those are the kinds of things that can really make a difference in someone's experience coming here. And then again, this is not present. So sometimes people will come and ask, I need to talk to the priest, or I have a question about this or that, and that you don't have the answer, but maybe the person at the Welcome Center does, or maybe you know where the priest is and you can, facilitate that. Rather than just saying, oh, well, go ask him, or go over there. Again, accompany, but also saying, this is so-and-so, and they have a question about this, and really facilitate that, that encounter with that person, so that it's much more personal and we're not just kind of passing people off from one to the next. In terms of judgment, prayer is always a good first step in ministry. And I know I get so flustered sometimes that I don't think about it ahead of time. But it's important as we begin our ministry to ask the Holy Spirit for inspiration and courage to go outside of our comfort zone, and to be willing to reach beyond our, what we're really accustomed to. And then also look for those who look like they don't belong. I see people who walk in the door and you can tell they're looking for something, or you can tell they're a little bit lost. You can tell they're, you've got a good feeling that they're probably looking for the restroom, and we don't have very good signs up there. So those are the people that we need to go toward, not wait for them to come to us, but can I help you? And to really reach out to them and to extend an offer of help, regardless of what they look like, whether we know them or not. And then in terms of encounter, you can introduce yourself. This isn't very easy when when it's the flood of people coming through 3 minutes before Mass. But when it's 10 minutes before Mass and people are coming in, it's pretty easy to have, a little bit more of a substantial encounter with someone. And just learning someone's name can be a huge deal in future interactions. And also for them to feel like they know someone here is a big deal. You can always ask questions. I get stories all the time. Oh, I'm from Denver. I'm from Louisiana. I'm visiting my daughter. And people like to share. I feel like now that we've had the Welcome Center up there, people just kind of gravitate towards there and they ask what it's about. And then they say, oh, well, I'm not from here. And they start telling you how they got here, which is great. And I think that the more that we can open those doors for people to feel like they're making a connection here is good, even if they're not from here. If they've got a son or a daughter here, that's great for them to be able to say, wow, you've got a really great parish. Maybe they didn't realize they had a great parish, and all of a sudden they realize, oh, this place is friendlier than I thought. So, and this is where, making time after Mass, if you're standing out in the narthex, if it's coffee and donuts Sunday, you could invite somebody down. Hey, we got coffee and donuts today. You want to join my family? We'd love to sit at a table with you and get to know you. Or stepping even a little bit further outside the comfort zone, if you've got a regular group of people who goes to brunch after Mass on Sunday, you might consider inviting someone that you've seen at Mass, maybe that person that you sit next to in the pew every single week and you don't know their name. Maybe it's a good time to reach out to them and invite them to join you in your group for brunch after Sunday Mass. Or even the Bible study or the prayer group here at the parish. Maybe it's a chirp retreat. Maybe it's, those kinds of invitations have much more impact if they're personal. And we're very shy about reaching out that way. But those kinds of invitations are really what are more likely to bring people, to draw people into the activity of the parish than announcements or bulletin ads or anything like that. So, wrapping up, we do have a vision. So, I think our hospitality ministry here is beautiful, and I feel like, this is a very welcoming place. I know when I first came here, my husband and I were a little bit nervous because we were used to small parishes, and this just seemed huge, and we weren't really sure, if we feel comfortable. But we were both really surprised that it just felt like a very comfortable environment. People were friendly, and we didn't feel like we were out of place at all. So I think, we're doing a good job, but of course, there's always room for improvement. And I think one of the first steps in that direction is just to make sure that we really are present and that we've got sufficient people here before and after Mass to really facilitate that welcome that we want to present. And so what we would like to do, not tomorrow, but within the next few months, is to also not just schedule greeters to be inside, but really to have greeters also outside at the entrance doors, to open doors and to greet people there. And we've had ushers in the past who have attempted to do that, and we've gotten some feedback that especially in the summer, they're wearing suits, it's really warm out there, and it's not necessarily, by the time they come in, they're drenched and, about ready to faint. Our greeters don't have the same dress code, so, bundle up and wear a nice, short sleeve shirt and not be quite so overheated. But to have a couple greeters out at the doors to help open those doors would be very welcoming. They're heavy doors, and really to have somebody right when you arrive would be a huge blessing to a lot of people. This is, so that Welcome Center obviously is changing on a weekly basis. That's not the final form. We'll get there someday, but just as an example. So of course we'll have somebody there, and then a greeter on each side handing out liturgy guides. And ultimately we would really like to have an usher at every single door to open those doors, because number one, we've had this discussion, should we have the doors just open? But one of the things that's really great about having those doors closed is that it keeps the nave of the church prayerful. If those doors are open, there's people talking out there, and it's just, you can't pray inside the church. And so as much as possible, if those doors can be closed and just opened as necessary as people arrive, that really helps to facilitate that transition into the sacred space of the nave of the church. And then I know our ushers, we usually say, okay, well, as long as we can get the collection done, we're good. But it really would be wonderful if we had ushers available, stationed inside the church, who'd be able to actually assist people. Some masses, it's not as much of a difficulty to find seats, but we do have masses where, it'd be helpful to have someone, especially if there's, we may have lots of space, but there's people on the edges of the pews. And it's really awkward to have to go up to somebody and say, can I get over there? And they either, just kind of angle their knees and you have to crawl over them, or they get up and get out and you have to go around them. It'd be great to have, be very hospitable to have an usher who's able to facilitate that, so that we're not leaving that on our guests to have to, fight for a seat. So this is the vision, that someday we'll have very robust teams. And when I say that, I really mean that our hospitality ministries ought to work as a team, so that, you may be an usher, you may be a greeter, but we can work together as a team to make sure that this is an experience of hospitality every Sunday when people come for Mass. Okay, that took longer than I anticipated. What we're going to do right now is we're going to break into ministry groups and just do a little bit of practical training and formation on your specific ministry. So Welcome Center hosts are going to meet down here. Our greeters are going to meet up in the narthex. And then the ushers will go up to the church. And I've got instruction sheets for the ushers. So probably most of you are experts, but I know there's a few things that there's always questions on. So thank you so much for coming and for making time to not only serve in this ministry, but also to reflect and to be willing to expand the way that you serve in hospitality ministry at our parish. So thank you very much.
Thank you.